Renting in the UK right now is cheaper than buying. That's not an opinion, that's the current data, and it completely changes the conversation. The average monthly rent across Great Britain is currently £1,547. The average monthly mortgage payment is £1,670. Renting is currently £123 cheaper every single month. And for the first time since June 2025, renting is officially cheaper than buying again. That sounds backwards. It sounds wrong. And if that sentence made you uncomfortable, good, because it means everything you thought you knew about housing might be built on assumptions that no longer match reality. Then there's the first-time buyer reality. Someone on an average UK salary buying with a 10% deposit now pays around £1,328 a month. Average rent for a similar property? £1,356. Almost identical. That's the part nobody expected. For years, the assumption was simple. Mortgage equals ownership and cheaper monthly payments. Rent equals dead money. But suddenly, the monthly costs barely look different at all. And once that happens, a much more uncomfortable question appears. If buying is supposed to be better, why does it suddenly cost more? Because monthly payments are only the beginning. The real costs are hiding underneath them. And once you see those costs properly, the entire argument shifts again. The moment you buy a house, the meter starts running in ways nobody talks about. Stamp duty, legal fees, surveys, insurance, repairs, maintenance. Suddenly your deposit is only the beginning. On a £500,000 property in London, stamp duty alone is £12,500 before you even move in. Legal fees usually cost between £1,500 and £3,000. Surveys can add another £500 to £1,500. Then there's maintenance. The boiler breaks, the roof leaks, the washing machine dies. As a rough rule, maintenance costs typically run at around 1% of the property value every year. Nobody puts that in the estate agent brochure. And then there's the part almost nobody understands properly. Interest. At current mortgage rates of around 5.11%, it takes 16.5 years before your monthly repayments outweigh the interest element. Think about that. For over 16 years, more of your payment is going toward interest than toward actually owning the property. And when mortgage rates peaked at 6.57% in August 2023, 86% of the first mortgage payment went purely toward interest. Not the house, not ownership, just the cost of borrowing. That changes how you see a mortgage completely. Because suddenly the phrase, "I'm building equity," becomes more complicated than people admit. But here's the dangerous part. Once people hear all of this, they usually swing too far the other way. Because renting has a hidden cost too. And unlike stamp duty or mortgage interest, this one compounds slowly over years until it quietly becomes enormous. When you rent, you own nothing at the end. Every payment disappears. You don't build equity, you don't own an asset. And over time, rent usually rises. Average rents increased by around 8.7% last year. So even if renting is cheaper today, there's no guarantee it stays cheaper. Meanwhile, someone paying a mortgage is at least slowly increasing ownership over time, even if most of the early payments go toward interest. That's the uncomfortable part of this debate. Both sides are telling half the truth. Buying has enormous hidden costs. Renting has enormous long-term trade-offs. And depending on where you live, the answer changes completely. Because the UK is not one housing market. It's dozens of completely different financial realities pretending to be one country. In Glasgow, mortgage payments are currently 32% cheaper than rent. That saves buyers around £396 a month, nearly £4,752 a year. That's a massive difference. But in Westminster, renting is £1,290 cheaper per month than buying the equivalent property. Same country, completely different maths. That's why blanket advice online is so dangerous. Someone in Glasgow and someone in London can make the exact same decision and end up with completely different financial outcomes. Which means the real question isn't, is renting better or is buying better? The real question is, better for who? Better where? Better for how long? And that last question changes everything. Because there's one number almost nobody factors into this conversation properly. Opportunity cost. Imagine someone with a £45,000 deposit saved up. Most people instantly assume that money should go toward a house deposit, because that's what everyone assumes you should do. But what if they didn't? What if instead of locking that £45,000 into property, they invested it instead? At an average 7% annual return, that £45,000 could grow to roughly £67,500 over 6 years without adding another penny. Suddenly, the maths changes dramatically. Because based on current numbers, renting and investing that deposit actually wins financially for the first 6 years. That surprises a lot of people. But then, something important happens. From year 7 onwards, buying becomes the clear winner. And that's the part that destroys simplistic internet advice. Because neither side wins immediately. Time changes everything. Stay short-term, renting can make more financial sense. Stay long-term, buying becomes far more powerful. The answer changes depending on your timeline. And right there is the final twist most people never realize until it's too late. This debate was never really about renting versus buying. It was about time. There's only a correct answer for your specific circumstances, which is why the smartest people don't ask which one is better. They ask, better for what? How long are you realistically staying in the property? What can you genuinely afford up front without stretching yourself dangerously thin? And if you didn't buy, what would you actually do with the deposit money instead? That last question matters more than most people realize. Because if the alternative is simply spending the money anyway, the maths changes again. But if the alternative is disciplined investing over years, the comparison becomes much closer than people think. That's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. Buying is not automatically smarter. Renting is not automatically wasting money. And anyone pretending there's a universal answer is oversimplifying one of the biggest financial decisions of your life. The smartest financial decisions are usually the ones built around your real life, not internet slogans. A house is not automatically a good investment just because you live in it. And renting is not automatically a bad decision just because you don't. That's what Pound Smart Pete is here for. Subscribe if you want more of it.